How's it going, Lynn?
I'm being treated by a physician with their
Life
PTA.
is just
on more occasions than being treated by a therapist. I was here. This morning. Yep.
Mr. Schumacher, and it's so nice to see you. How is your father doing?
He gets home tomorrow. Doing all right. Excited to be home. It's his birthday tomorrow.
Oh, is it?
Glad to be home for his birthday. Yeah. All right. Got to get to go to my daughter's graduation. Don't hold me. Yeah, 75. I'm trying to do the math. New York.
Oh, what a-
That's why I'm an English teacher. No, he was born in 45.
Yeah, he's still.
What's up with you? Everything good?
Yeah, can't complain at all.
Yeah. Call this meeting to order. Roll call. Dr.
Yeah.
Brenner,
Here.
Dr. Nicola,
In the house, Lord.
Mr. Kozowitz.
Here.
Dr. Schumacher,
Here.
Mr. Sefner,
Yeah.
Ms. Shield,
Here.
Dr. Burke. Here. Pledge allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And mission statement.
Yeah. Cultivating learners who apply skills and experiences to enrich society.
Thank you. And then on to student success.
Yes, this item we have today, we have used the Envision mathematics resource, not a curriculum, but a resource to support our mathematics curriculum in grades K through 8 for the last 5 years. The committee was satisfied with this resource, and I would like to recommend renewing that resource to an upgraded 21 version that has more supports for English learners, interactive student workbooks, and an updated digital platform. So just information to the board. I have some contract information in the packet. We're recommending a 3-year extension of this project.
This will come up at the next meeting for approval.
It'll come up at the next meeting, yeah, just information purposes.
2022 kindergarten through grade 12 schedule.
Yeah, this was an item that was discussed at the April 26th board meeting, again, on Friday at the Student Success Committee meeting. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of the teachers and staff members who participated in the development of the recommendation. Certainly a lot of work, and we are looking for a motion.
Motion to approve the 2021-2022 schedule as presented.
Second.
Moved in second, any additional discussion?
As we talked about at our meeting on Friday, I brought up at our last meeting that there were several areas that I was still concerned about, and even with some of the discussion that we had the other day, there's still some concerns I have in regard to this, especially with the review process, with the learning gaps that might be there based on the amount of time in the classroom, 90 minutes per block schedule time. And I'm talking about the high school here. I'm fine with the elementary K through 8 schedule. I'm just talking about 9 through 12. Again, as a teacher, I think it's troubling for a 90-minute schedule to teach in that format. And I think as a student, and I teach college, so I see classes that are 90 minutes long, and I know adults who struggle with even a classroom that long. And I can imagine a 14-year-old freshman trying to sit through a 90-minute class if there are engagement issues. So I still struggle with this.
Well, I know we agree to disagree on this.
Yeah,
So,
right.
Yeah,
That's fine.
I just think as, even going back to my high school career, we had double classes for almost every subject area.
Sure.
And it all depends on the engagement ability of the teacher. There's no
Yeah, it's all
question about
instructional based.
it is, and I think the effort being made here to develop those instructional formats, which are going to be different than what's been done in the past. And I understand a lot of people remember the old 4-block schedule, where there were problems with gaps between times that certain subject matter was taught at the year. That's not how this plays out, and nor is every flex doing this. If we're ever going to get to a point where we're going to have the ability to do cross-discipline learning, we're never going to get it done in a 40-minute period that really only ends up to be 40 minutes because of the passing time and just the normal motion that goes on in the class and settling down. You definitely pick up instructional time when you go to 90 minutes. Just it's automatic just because you don't have the motion that comes into it. It's challenging. I agree. I think it's extra work for teachers.
Sure.
And it changes the way the presentation is made. But it was teachers that put this together. So that being the case, I feel they feel they're up to the challenge. And that's the reason that I can support.
I understand that. And, you know, I really enjoyed listening to Mr. Travis and to Ms. Juarez and all the discussion that we had the other day on Friday. And, you know, one of the things that I was still concerned about, and I mentioned this during our meeting the other day, is I'm not so certain that parents were truly brought into the mix as stakeholders. And at the same time, I'm not really sure the students were, the high school students were brought into the mix as stakeholders and their thoughts, their opinions based on their experience this past year. And that troubles me.
And just for everyone in the room, we did hold a committee meeting. It was a public meeting. We posted it. Anybody could have listened, but we did. Mr. Travis, the entire administration, union representation was there. We went over the schedule. We had a really wonderful discussion. Sean, I hear your concerns. Bob as well, and we've been promised by all parties that they would put together a system that ensured, you know, evaluation and feedback and monitoring. And we also gave them grace and time to be able to pivot if something didn't quite was working the way they intended. And I too, this was a collective effort of many. And I trust that all involved is going to be able to put those monitoring techniques in place. And, you know, but we have to make sure, you know, 45 minutes, 90 minutes, quality instruction has to happen.
No question about that.
You know, and so we will do anything, you know, I believe all stakeholders will ensure that that happens. And we encourage everybody to provide feedback. There isn't anybody on this administrative team that doesn't believe in the importance of feedback. So we need people to provide feedback, actionable feedback, so action can be taken if necessary. And I do appreciate everyone taking their Friday morning to be able to kind of huddle around this issue. But I also know from a timing standpoint, we have to be able to put this in place before we can start all the other building blocks. And we can all agree to disagree as well. I mean, I think we all kind of came to this issue from a slightly different angle.
Sure. And as I mentioned the other day in the meeting, I come at this from 3 different lenses. I come at it from an educator lens, I come as a school board member, and as a parent. And the last thing I'll say, because I think I made all my points on Friday, is that when we went from, in 2010, when we went from a block schedule to a traditional bell schedule, that took a lot of time to make that happen. From what I understand, it took almost 2 full years. This change is happening very, very quickly, and I think it needs more time to look at.
I do agree, though, we've evolved since then, because Dr. Ship and I were part of that proposal as well, and I believe we've matured significantly with our delivery, and especially our learning models. So I hear you, Sean, but we have evolved as well.
Yeah, I think it shouldn't take 2 years to make a change. There are very few industries that it takes 2 years. And I can't think of any, maybe in education, but primarily in anything else that is an endeavor. If it took you 2 years, the business model would fail, so it's not possible.
And I understand what you're saying, Dr. Burnett, you certainly shouldn't take 2 years, but at the same time, given the situation with the pandemic, how we transferred very quickly from a traditional schedule to this schedule that we used throughout this school year, throughout the pandemic, and then to say this is the one that's going to work for us as we move into 21, 22,
Well, I said,
with minimal, truly minimal, and we're only talking 7-8 months at this point of experience of what we're doing with this particular schedule.
Can I ask you a question? Forgive me, just being a little bit tired here. Why now? Why the push now? We're coming out of the pandemic. We've had multiple different huge transitions over the last little while. You know, we have kids who are coming in who have been doing some hybrid, some just at home. And now we're gonna ask 8th graders to transition into 90-minute classroom periods. That's tough. So I'm just asking, why now?
Well, and I'll say too, back to, we had that discussion quite frequently. And one thing that does add more instructional minutes in the day, that gives us an opportunity to help recoup some of that learning loss. It provides much needed collaboration time for teachers, so that's 90 minutes a week for teachers to get together as common course teams and of like peer groups to have conversations and collaborate on best instructional practice. And also addresses systemically the social emotional learning part of students by building that into a schedule without losing academic instructional minutes. So those are a lot of the conversations that the team had developed and struggled with and vetted prior to making the recommendation. And at our Friday meeting, I think Ms. Juarez had one of the most, I guess, thoughtful comments that was there when she said that her belief is that this schedule is best for kids. And I would support that.
Again, I hear what you're saying about teacher collaboration, but again, we're gonna be asking an 8th grade, 13-year-old to transition from an online partial day school year to a 90-minute math class. Correct?
Correct.
That's tough. That's a tough transition.
But why is it tough? I don't understand that. And I hear everybody say it, but I'm thinking, if you're in
For a student?
yeah, I mean, I was a student. I was in 90-minute class. I mean, and I'm trying to think, what was so hard?
I can't stand 90-minute classes, no.
Well, I mean, most continuing education all are longer than 90 minutes, right? So, yeah, actually, and I guess it's individual, but I feel that when you're working on a subject, if you're an engaging teacher, and if you know how to bring in other disciplines while you're doing it, so you're not just standing there lecturing about a single topic, I would agree, that's pretty much boring. But that's not what our teachers are going to do. And that's what we heard them talk about when we were at the meeting on Friday, is that this is a kind of flowed education, as opposed to just sitting there compartmentalized. So you're okay, so we're doing algebra in this period, and then we run to the next class and we got 40 minutes to learn English. And then we run to the next class and we've got 40 minutes to do something else. So the continuity of just a learning model isn't really there. I mean,
You can't look at it from a night, Gary and everybody, you have to look at the whole schedule as a whole, because I'm gonna take back Mr. Travis's comment, it's fat and skinny.
Right.
And so it's not your 4 block. It's very different from that, and it allows, and it's not, nobody wants 90 minutes of lecture. And actually, it actually supports more active learning, lab learning, engaging learning, where a 45 minutes sometimes does dictate nothing but straight lecture. So it should, if done correctly, should enhance the learning experience, because there's mini lecturettes and engagement, engagements, lab activities, group projects, project-based learning. I mean, it embraces all of those learnings that ensures that the learners are engaged. It is not lecture.
And I made the argument the other day, Dr. Burks, that at times it can be the exact opposite of that. Because what I pointed out, Gary, was that if you're meeting with a class 5 days a week, 48 minutes, and granted, I'll give you the few minutes to get started, it's maybe only 48 minutes, 40 minutes of instruction on any given day. But at least you're reviewing the concepts that you've learned the day before, and you're not waiting on a Monday until a Thursday to meet with that instructor, or a Wednesday, every other day, whatever the case might be. you're meeting with those teachers, and you're building these relationships, you're fostering these relationships, because you're seeing these teachers every day. And that review process is really crucial for long-term mastery. My point being then also is that for a student who might be struggling, and Dr. Brenner, I'm going to assume as a student, you were a very high achieving student, that's my guess. And that comes easily for you, learning does. But for those who it doesn't come easy for, if you're in a 90-minute class where in theory, you should be learning more concepts in that 90 minutes, if you're struggling with that first concept and then you're moving on to another concept in the same exact day, how is that going to make it easy for that student to learn and to achieve the way he or she needs to achieve?
But I trust the committee, Dr. Schumacher, I have to. Mr. Travis, our union representation, they have huddled around this and discussed this for a long time. And I think we have to trust where the committee has gotten. And I think we continue to monitor it, because otherwise the other option is to go back where we were. And I don't think anybody wants to go back there. And we have to trust we have to trust our teacher committees. They created this, they discussed it, and they're coming forward with this recommendation. And I worked on it for a while, and we have the blessing of Dr. Schimpf, we have the blessing of Dr. Bogdan. We have to trust that.
I understand the
We-
trust
from a
issue, and
board level, we
I
have to
trust
make
our
sure that
teachers,
that
but
monitoring is
at
there.
the same time, I think as much as the goodwill is there, I think 90 minutes is just too difficult for any student. That's my gut feeling.
And that's honestly, obviously we'll be to disagree on that too. That, I mean, I've taught in the block, and that was my same thing. Obviously, when I listened to the whole thing, I didn't just dismiss it right away, but you know, that was my first thing too. You can do different activities, but to still keep a kid engaged for 90 minutes. I mean, it might be easy on the teacher part because we're professionals, I get that. But you know, there's varying levels of learners in all the classes, and I guarantee you, there's gonna be a lot of kids that are gonna be zoned out after, you know, X amount of minutes. I mean, it happens with all the good teachers too. I mean, I've been pretty much told that this year. So that was my concern. Honestly, the same with the everyday, and I would prefer it to kids see their teachers every day right now. Especially kind of comparing off what you said, Dr. Katula, kind of coming off the back end of all this. You know, maybe it's something we don't do right now, but we revisit.
See, and I guess my problem with that is I think this is the time to make the change.
I would,
Because they're coming off of a year that wasn't as productive as it should have been. And a year before that wasn't as productive. as it
yeah, the
should
last
have
quarter definitely wasn't.
been. Yeah, and they need the time and the effort to be able to talk about the ones that need the greater help. They need the time to be able to accumulate the efforts that are going to be needed to get them up to a level. If we go back to the same thing we always did before, you're going to have a lot of kids dragging their tail behind because they're already there. We know how many kids we need to bring into summer school. We know how many kids are not up to the level that we need. And if we just keep doing it, how are we going to make it better? I mean, I don't see how that makes it better. I just don't. And I understand it, again, you know, I was around, my kids were in that block schedule.
Yeah.
And I mean, they all survived, you know, but it wasn't a good block. I agree. It had a lot of flaws in it. And I think many of those things have been addressed. And and they're not every class is 90 minutes. You know, and they're seen every other day. It gives a teacher a chance to evaluate how effective was my teaching that day. You know, what did I reach the people I needed to do? I need to reevaluate and change something. When they're going to pop in the next day, I don't, you know, it's not as easy. They haven't had the time to discuss it with the others.
I guess under the normal schedule, I guess we would say like what I've been using at East, you know, when it comes to evaluating stuff like that, I'll use my prep or, you know, we've got teachers that are offering the same content, so we'll talk or, you know, I'll stay after school a little bit later and do it then, you know. I guess that's kind of how I address that issue with the regular schedule, I guess I would say.
Maybe Mr. Travis or Ms. Suarez, maybe you all want to say some things too, because, I mean, you are on the committee and this is your recommendation.
Thank you. I think, and I get the understanding of time and how is this time well is certainly going to be a question we're all going to have to answer. I think part of it too is we can't think of a schedule just in the sense of time and classes and periods. We have to think about bigger than this, the schedule. What are we trying to accomplish with the schedule? I think we're trying to accomplish a lot of different things. And we were given a task to think about how we can use our time and our daily schedule to meet the needs of our community, our students where they are right now and in the future. I truly believe that the schedule committee, the team that worked together, tried to answer all those questions. We put an advisory in place to make sure we meet our students' social emotional needs, but also have an academic advisement. We have many of our students who need a trusted adult in our system, and they don't have that right now. We know that, and that's very important for us to build those reconnections back in. The other piece is that we're building in structures to support our kids. We have daily office hours, both for our students to get access to their teachers each and every day. We go back to our traditional schedule, they will get access to support, but not necessarily access to their teachers. And I do think the flex time is a very unique opportunity for us to reconnect kids back to our school. It's different, it's unique, but it's certainly based in good practice. So that's really where they're at. I think the team did an amazing job of compromising and looking at nearly every variable they could to make sure they met every need. So that's where I'm at.
I got you, and I definitely think as a board, we've shown we've been open to change. It's just all open to change.
Okay, hi. I wasn't expecting to speak, but I will just say that I think that people have worked very hard on this schedule. It was the committee of educators that came together. Dr. Schimpf and I have talked all year about truly hearing the voice of our committees, that they're putting a lot of time and a lot of effort into this. They're doing the research, and your teachers know their students. And it's not about what's happening at another school district, it's about what's happening right here. And this school district, these teachers got your kids back to school this year. They're the ones that are in the classroom, and they're the ones that came up with this schedule. They're the ones that know what needs to happen next year, and this is what they want. You'll talk to people, and people may say, I prefer block, or I prefer, our old schedule. But when you look at this schedule, our old schedule simply does not have collaboration time. It simply does not have the supports for students built into the day. So if we don't have this, we know we're going back to very little support for our students during the days and no collaboration time for our teacher during the days. Change is scary. It's going to be difficult. We've talked so much about needing support and saying, listen, as we go through this change, the teachers can do it, but they're going to need your support. They're going to need the feedback. They're going to need to be able to be honest with you and tell you what's going on, and it may not be perfect, but it's going to be what's best for students. I would just say that your teachers know what those students need, and it's not about what's going on at a different school, it's about what's going on in this school. And what's going on is this school is that this is the schedule they came up with, and it was thought through, very well. It was talked through every committee. We've had countless meetings, and I said before, and I'll say it here, I didn't want to like the schedule. I don't want to change it. I didn't want to like the schedule, but you cannot find a schedule that offers as much student support as this high school schedule does. You just can't. 90 minutes, a kid is going to sit in school all day, no matter what. We're not going to have them sitting in their seat for 90 minutes straight, but whether they have 90-minute classes or 45-minute classes, they're going to be here from 7:25 till the end of their day. So it doesn't matter. Right now in the middle school, they're in the same classroom for a couple hours, right? So, that they stay in the classroom and the teachers rotate. They'll be fine, and we'll teach them. That's what we do. We teach them.
Rachel, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So if I'm a teacher and I'm asked to do this now, so now I'm preparing my schedule, I'm preparing my lectures, I'm preparing what I have to do. We're going from one way, then COVID way, and now we're going another way. Is that enough time for teachers to prepare? Is that enough time for a teacher to say, I'm ready to teach, a push, I'm ready to do this, and I'm ready to give a 90-minute day-to-day or Tuesday and Thursday that I can redo how I normally do things to prepare for for them? Is this enough time?
And before you answer that question, Ms. Warris, let me just say this too, Gary. It's not just what you just said. It's going from 2 days at 90, 1 day at 48, 2 more days at 90. It's even more complicated.
So, there's never enough time. I mean, I could take the whole year off and plan a really great lesson, but, I think that you don't really plan lessons one at a time. You plan units. So I think the best thing we can do is let our teachers know what they're teaching before they leave and what classes they're going to teach in that schedule. And you put together that calendar, you put together, especially for AP classes, the test is this day and you work backwards and how many days you have. And you look and say, okay, now I have these 90-minute blocks. What can I do that's going to be best for my students in 90 minutes? What can I do that's going to be best for my students in 45? Not everyone's going to love it. Not everyone is going to love it. Not everyone's going to be excited about changing lesson plans, but yeah, we need them to plan. I mean, it's absolutely doable because you don't plan one lesson at a time, you plan units.
But speaking for the teachers, you feel comfortable that they would stand up and say, this is doable and we can do this.
Well, the challenge for us is this, Dr. Petula. If we go to a 48-minute period, we're changing anything. Nothing we did, we can't, what we have is we'll curate our content that we have. But we have to transition no matter what. If we go back to, we are not going to teach, our current schedule is only 85% of our curriculum time. Use the microphone. Sorry. Our curriculum, we only have 85% of our curriculum in this year's schedule. So we lost 15% of our curriculum because of time, we lost that because of the 10-minute passing period. Where we recapture time is we have fewer passing periods, shorter durations of time. But I will tell you this is moving us from a standpoint of just teaching lesson by lesson by lesson, as Rachel said, it's developing learning progression. This is developing a progression of learning. We want our staff to think in 270 minutes of time, not in 90. We want them to think across that time to build an instructional narrative, to build those connections for our kids, which require a tremendous amount of review, no matter if it's a 5-day week or 3-day week. You're going to continually go back and forth through that process. So to me, I think we're going in the direction we need to go, and we're going to change no matter what. Right? You can't go with what we did this year.
I think that, yes, the teachers will be able to do it. I think that everyone would agree they can do it. I think that what they would like from you is what can we take off their plate? For example, we put so much on this year, and I asked at the Friday meeting, I said, we have to have the priorities. What are your priorities for teachers next year? So they're going to want some flexibility. They're going to want some autonomy, with Canvas. Can they, yes, the classes have to be the same, but can they use Canvas in a more autonomous way? What are our committees going to be focused on? Are they going to have all new school improvement goals? Are we going to have a surprise, system brought in or, something? I think those are the things that they're going to say, yes, I can do this. Is there anything else that you can take off my plate, or is there more coming in? Because even if we went back to 45-minute classes, they can't pull out their lesson plans from 2 years ago and say, okay, now I'm teaching these. We're teaching different students. Our students have learning gaps that they didn't have 2 years ago. So they're going to have to replan all their lessons anyway.
And we're still going back to nowhere in the literature that you're reading about where education is going does 45 minutes equal quality education. Nowhere. We're assuming that a normal schedule that we did equates to quality, and so here we, how do you not learn from the pandemic? How do you not reflect and learn? Our teachers are more equipped, they're going to be better classroom teachers because of what they went through. And so that classroom time is precious. They've learned they can push content, asynchronously. They can pull powerful content synchronously. They have evolved tremendously over that time. If we go back to that 45-minute structure, if we actually go backwards, we don't go forward. And we actually move forward in terms of mastery learning as well. And it's the deeper learning that has to happen. And learning is not linear. And who said that we had all this quality education in this other schedule? This is something that the teachers came up with themselves, that they said, this is where we want to go now. And if we're concerned about the quality that's happening, that we have to make sure that those mechanisms are in place to monitor it and to pivot.
And, you know, for me, probably the most powerful thing we're putting in place is that 90 minutes of collaboration. Because that's truly going to give our teachers embedded time for them to focus on student learning and growth. We don't have that now. We have that after school, 45 minutes on a Wednesday afternoon, after we taught an entire day, which is tough for us to collaborate, which gets carved up many different ways. We've allocated this time dedicated to collaboration, to truly focus on student learning. And I've said this to Dr. Schiff a number of times, and it's not because our teachers aren't working hard. We know what kids do in our building. We don't always know what they learn because we don't have time. The time to get in and dig into where kids are is tough. It's really tough. In our set, in a 8-period schedule, you're running through the day, you're going through your schedule. It's a race. And I get in a block schedule, sometimes you're going for longer durations of time, but I think you go deeper with the content and you can get deeper in terms of cognitive thinking and engagement with our kids than we can right now. I just think we can. And again, this schedule is a compromise for me too. There's compromises for me that I had to make too, that this isn't my perfect schedule either. But that's part of the process. We went through this process with our staff and our committees and everybody. We tried to take as much feedback to design to close to the considerations that we need to, and certainly the feedback we were getting to meet the needs of our community. So,
Just a quick question, Dave. How many teachers did you have on that committee?
and our transition
Yeah, I get
committee,
the high school for the high school.
the transition committee that designed the schedule is about 10 staff members. And then we have 70 staff members now engaged in the other parts of the process that have volunteered their time. 70 teachers working on various aspects. Some are working on advisory, some are working on our LMS, some are working on engagement expectations, some are working on professional development. And then we have a group that's working on flex block. That will continue throughout the next year. And we'll continue to build those committees and do that process of feedback, where we at, how we doing, what do we need to fix, what do we need to get better at throughout that process.
And I'll add Mr. Sefner too. Mr. Travis hosted a series of meetings and events with his whole staff to get various levels of feedback. We actually sat at the teachers lounge for an entire day, just holding open office hours to give teachers opportunities to kind of express their thoughts, their feelings, and ask questions.
I guess I'm just kind of uncomfortable with not knowing what I'm looking at. I'd like to be looking at a finished product before I'm actually voting on something, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was like that with something else too, a couple of years ago too, and it skips my mind what it was, and I couldn't do it because I just didn't know anything about it.
If you haven't seen the schedule, been able to be privy to that, that's my apology.
You haven't seen the schedule yet, Jason?
No, I've seen the schedule.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you didn't see it in its final. What do you mean by
What don't you
finished
have?
product?
What's that?
What do you have the schedule or what don't you have?
Oh, yeah, you know what, I think I actually misspoke on that, to be honest with you, because I just lost my train of thought, because I was thinking of a different. But I didn't misspeak, I just lost my train of thought writing something else down.
No, and I get it too, and it's fraught with peril. I mean, it always is, every change is. And again, I think I compliment the committee because we probably went through, this is iteration 400 of many. So, I mean, this has been a process. But again, there's things that we may learn through the process that we want to do differently. There's things we might want to try differently, but
I remember what it was, just seeing what the finished product looked like. That's what I was talking about. I just was circling back, as they say.
I feel very strongly that we need to support both the administration and the staff and the teachers. If they truly do feel that this is the best way to go, I prefer to support them because I think they've done the research on it. And I think it's been a good discussion, but I think it's perfect, absolutely not. And I don't think any of us know that it's perfect. But we have the checks and balances in there. It's a way for us to start growing and maybe going in the right direction.
Right. Well, it's their job to bring these things to us. It's not our job to construct the schedule. So we either approve it or we disapprove it. But this has been a really long effort for a lot of people. And we have the group, which encompasses administration, which encompasses teachers, the union, that are all agreeing that this is the schedule that they would recommend at this time. I have a hard time, I mean, I'm not an educator, a lot of education, but not an educator, but still, I don't feel that it would be my place to say, you know, I know better. After they spent how many hours researching this topic and going through various possibilities. And that, it's part of this problem comes back from, we had block schedule in the past. A lot of parents remember that. Unfortunately, they're remembering something much different in this schedule. And I don't see how we can go back to what we were doing previously, which is going to take just as much work without any forward thinking.
And I would tell you, if we brought back a block schedule without any other features, without any of the other pieces, the flex block, the collaboration time, the advisory, the office hours. If we did that, you know, it's absolutely right to tell us that we didn't do our work. We didn't do our homework. We didn't answer the call of the community. That's not what this group did. And so that's where it is certainly has longer periods of time, what are called, in the technical terms, called a fat, and then there's a skinny, and that's what they're called. We call them large or small, whatever we want to call them, but that's, we use those, you know, we look through the process and we truly try to design something to meet the needs of our community.
And what I think is really important is you talk about all that time that you waste in passing periods. You've gained that in the classroom. We've gained instruction time.
Yeah.
And I've had kids in high school too. I mean, those passing periods, you know, you spend a lot of time in those passing periods. And
Aren't the passing periods the same equivalency though? Aren't they 10 minutes now, only 5 minutes in the normal schedule?
They're
well, you're not
five,
passing
however,
as
but
much,
you
you're
don't
not,
have eight
you're not
per day.
passing as much, Sean. So you're.
And you have to remember, every time we pass through lunch, so we have 6 lunches, we have to have 5-minute pass periods in between those as well.
Fair enough.
So that's turned into instruction time.
That's turned into your advisory, that's turned into your flex time, that's turned into your time to reconstitute back into instructional time.
You know, a passing period is a disruption. And it's like anyone who's working, and if you have employees that use their cell phone,
Sure.
we know that when they look up something on the internet that is not work related, it takes them 8 to 10 minutes to regain their focus. So it's just part of it. And you also move and you change and you change your focus, you lose the flow. So that's part of it. Part of it's the collaboration. And we know in other countries that have been very successful with student growth, that teacher collaboration is absolutely at the top of the list.
I would agree.
And we have been, I think we went to the lecture for Finland how many years ago? It's got to be 8 or 10 years ago, and we said, what a great idea, and we never went. So this gives us an opportunity to make a step in that direction. Because we know teachers, when they collaborate, come up with new and better ideas for instruction.
Absolutely.
And that's, those teachers, and just an example, in that country, spent less time with students, more time collaborating, and yet they were the #1 rated school system.
And I can tell you, and I shared this on Friday with Dr. Schumacher, and I shared with Dr. Burks, Dr. Brenner as well, that the team that got together that worked on the teaching of the Black, the first professional development session, what they did, and there was no administrators in the room, it was teachers and teacher leaders getting together, and what they designed and what they talked about throughout that day was high quality instruction that everyone wants their students to be involved in. I couldn't be prouder of what they did, put together. They're tired. They're all tired. We're all exhausted. But to invest that time and energy into that was something to me, and I shared with you, Sean. I said, that's going to pay us dividends in the future, because that's what kids, we need to get to. We've talked a lot about what we do in our classrooms. We haven't talked about how. And I think that's what we can do with the schedule. And again, I think it meets our community's needs. I understand and respect your decisions, and certainly if it goes the other way, we will certainly meet the needs of our community in any way we can. So I appreciate at least your consideration. I truly do.
I just would like to say one thing, and this is more directed at Ms. Warren's points. Please don't misunderstand my opposition to this based on what our teachers have done this year. I've been an incredible advocate. I've been everyone I've talked to, every community member I've talked to. I'm beyond proud and
just thankful and grateful for everything our teachers have done for our students this year. The courage that you took to get our kids back in school to have this year has been unbelievable, second to none. And I've been an incredible advocate to tell people about how amazing our administration is, how amazing our teachers are and our staff, and just how grateful I am. So please don't misinterpret my opposition to this schedule for anything else. I look at two things, well, really three things, because I want to get back to Dr. Burge's point too. I value what our teachers do. I value their work, their time, their efforts, and everything they put into this. I value it greatly, immeasurably. As a teacher, nothing is more valuable when others acknowledge and recognize the time and work and effort you put into something. And I recognize that fully, 100%. But at the same time, we're talking about two important stakeholders that had minimal understanding of what's going into this decision that might be made tonight. Parents and students. Parents especially, as I mentioned in the meeting the other day, I had an email from a parent who was incredibly concerned about her son, who is a high achieving student, who is struggling this year, and her main reason for it, she believed, was that it was the way the schedule is with 90-minute periods. I don't know how many parents understand the potential consequences this may have for their students. I don't know how many students understand where they're at, what they feel, especially given the pandemic and everything that they've been through. And to get back, Dr. Burks, to your point about there's no research about 45 minutes being quality. There's not any research about 90 minutes being quality. We talked about this the other day. There's no research that indicates one way is better than another. But I think we have to also consider the other stakeholders that are involved above and beyond these teachers who are so amazing, who've done this great work. There's other people involved.
But Sean, you talk about consequences, what about benefits?
I'm sure there are both. I'm sure there are. I'm quite sure there are both.
Funny, we actually teach in 3-hour blocks. I could never go back to 45 minutes. I mean, we teach in 3-hour blocks.
My 3-hour blocks are broken up with a 10-minute.
Yeah, but there's still the blocks. Yeah, sure. So with, so.
And I also think with the social emotional aspect, I mean, Dr. Stu, a couple of weeks ago, you talked about, the number of 14, 15, 16-year-olds and what they're going through with mental health issues and the social emotional aspect. If we go back to our 8-period day, there's just not time in the day to reach those kids. Yeah, they're gonna connect with the teacher every day, but every kid doesn't connect with every teacher in their class. There's some kids who walk through our doors, who go to class and never talk to an adult in the classroom. It's no fault of our teacher, they try. So we're coming off a pandemic when our kids need us the most, when they need some downtime to the day where we can connect with them, where we can have an assembly in the gym and not lose instructional time, where they can have a break in their day from the advisory and the flex time and connect with counselors and do college planning and get caught up on academics where they're failing. I mean, if we go back to the schedule, we don't have that unless we pull them out of a class or we take out of an elective, which they'd rather be in possibly than a core. So now we're taking away electives for kids because you need to get caught up or you need to relearn something that you missed. So I think there's a bigger picture, and it goes, there is no research. You can find research one way or the other, 45 minutes, 90, doesn't matter. Either you're engaged or you're not engaged. But at some point, we got to think about the health of our kids too, mentally. And how do we connect them back to the school and have some pride for Yorkville High School and get in the gym and get to an assembly and listen to adults talk to them and hang out with each other. I mean, there's more to it than just.
Well, especially in that, we talked about, even the site, we know that when we moved away from the traditional 4 block, which this is not, and then moved to this traditional schedule, we know there are consequences to the science and to the math scores. We knew that, and we were never able to build that lab time and that active learning time back into those disciplines that do require that deeper learning. We know that kids need deeper learning wherever it happens. So even if where do we fit in the deeper learning for them to be in a lab or do all those other things now in the traditional schedule?
And I would venture to say you're right. I mean, I think from your lab standpoint, from your engineering courses, from your art, from your music, there's a great benefit to having kids for a long period of time. And who's to say that those aren't more important or equally as the other courses?
Even writing, teaching labs. You teach and you can go to a writing lab. Incredibly powerful.
It's just, the high schools put a tremendous amount of work in. They believe in the schedule. Does it have flaws? I'm sure it does. Our 8-period, 9-period day has flaws. And I think that has a lot more flaws if we go back to it.
Well, I think it just kind of bounces off what Tom said, and then Lisa tried to do tell your parent what a great job our teachers have done, administration has done. And we support all that. And now they're coming up with something they think is gonna be better, but we're gonna say, no, we're not gonna support.
Well, that's.
The same thing about consulting.
Could you really quick just touch upon? We talked about the social,
Mhm.
emotional, touch upon how you see that, and how you envision that a little bit more with the new block schedule and how you see the benefit.
Well, they talked about it, David, with the advisor and flex time.
Absolutely.
The advisor is structured in a way, every student will have 2 advisors. They'll have an advisor every, 2 advisors, so they're gonna have 2 trusted adults in their advisor. Part of the advisor will work on social emotional health of our students, which are already planning, using the CASEL framework, the SEL framework, which is a pretty widely established framework that's used across the board. Plus, they're gonna have an academic advisor. Many of our students, as we showed some of our data at the beginning of the year, we've had a decline in performance. And that's gonna be a challenge for us over the next several years of working with our students, advising them and helping support them. The flex time is gonna have every day for kids to be engaged. It's not just about kids going to get help. It's about opportunities for kids to pursue passion, interest, to find opportunities to connect with each other and with other staff members. Our staff will be available, half our staff will be available each and every day. So those students have opportunities to pursue. Mike Gonzalez, who's leading that group, showed me today, they're coming up with master classes. They're gonna invite guest speakers to come in. They're gonna invite in our learning stairs to have live performances going on where kids can be kids. We have to create an experience for our students to want to be back. Our school right now is wonderful. We've done an amazing job and I'm so proud of our staff. I would take them against anybody in the world. But our school right now is a transactional system because it's because of the pandemic. We have the safety, it's paramount over everything. Next year, we can create an experience for kids. That's important.
We can use that time for clubs and activities to meet where they've missed out this year. And to get them back to do that is gonna be hard.
Yeah. Our plan is to have a club and activity running every month. Our clubs and activities will have an opportunity to get kids connected. Our goal is to have every kid connected to something next year. Every kid. We've lost a lot of our students this year. They're disconnected from our system. We have to get them reconnected. And again, time is part of the schedule. We've created it, our team has created an environment. You have to think of it in that way. The environment that they're trying to create is more important than the time. The environment is all the things that Dr. Schiff is saying, the bigger picture piece that we're trying to create. Because our kids need an experience. In order for them to re-engage in school, to re-engage in this, to be in Yorkville thought, we have to create an experience.
And the schedule also allows for key time for teachers to be able to reflect and also, and the built-in time on the, you talk about giving care to the teachers, the schedule does this as well, when they need it the most.
Adult SEL
And
is a
they're,
big,
we need
factor
to
for us
re-engage
next
them
year.
as well, and this allows us to do that. And, Jason, bless your heart, but after 8, 9, 10 hours in a school day, you're not really at your most creative. So this gives the teacher the time to do it when they're in their zones.
Right. And to me, that 90-minute collaboration time, we're a good school, and Dr. Shim and I talked about, we are a really good school at doing great things. This could take us to a different level. It really could. Is it gonna be a challenge? Is it gonna happen overnight? No, but giving our staff time to truly collaborate around student learning is something we've never had before. And we haven't done it at the expense of instructional time or opportunities for kids. And that's when we started this process, and our first schedule was, we're gonna have a late start Thursday, and it was like, well, what was the trade-off for that? Well, the trade-off was we were gonna lose instructional time. Well, we didn't want to do that. So we worked hard to figure that out, and we did. And so that's where you see the creativity in what they've done. And our teachers didn't make the schedule easy for them. They did it because they wanted to truly meet the expectations that they were given and the needs that they felt our community has.
And I would say, even my own 4 kids gone through our schools, 2 out of the 4 would tell you that the 8-period day was complete drudgery for them. that it was just period after period after period. We would do it over again the next day, over and over and over. The other two did just fine. They worked, they thrived in that environment. So I don't believe the current schedule we have also is the end all be all for everybody and for all the kids.
Well, you know, we look at research and maybe that, so time, you're right, there is nothing specific. But when you look at time allowed for teacher collaboration, there is a ton of research that supports when you do that, you get better education. And as you said, and this is not a new idea. We've been talking about this over almost a decade. And finally, you know, we have a schedule that allows for that. And there is all type of research that shows that collaboration time for teachers gives them that leg up in improving their instructional style. It's a peer-to-peer organization. And when you get peers to interact in anything, when they have time to do that, they learn from each other better than they're going to learn from somebody else.
I agree in this profession, you know, when I started many, many moons ago, was, could be done as a very independent activity. You could do it by yourself, do it all yourself and be fine. The teachers, it's too hard. The job is too much. You need partners, you need people to bounce ideas off of and collaborate with each and every day. And so this is gonna help our teachers' mental health. It's gonna help them be more productive and help better serve our students. So to me, collaboration was the big one that I really, really absolutely wanted, and along with the student social emotional growth of our students. I think that's a big piece that our students need.
I don't disagree with you there, Mr. Travis. Education's about relationships.
Yep.
You can look at all the data you want, but it's ultimately comes down to relationships. That's where it's going to be successful. So no matter what the vote is here, I certainly hope that the relationship building, the connections continue the way they've been. They've been really great, and we can make them even stronger.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Brenner,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowitz,
Yes.
Dr. Katsula,
Yes.
Dr. Schumacher,
No.
Mr. Sefner,
No.
Ms. Shields,
No.
Dr. Burke.
Yes.
Thank you for the discussion. Approval.
I think it's, Dr. Schiff asked then that because the time is on our side, that, because of the sales, we're going back to the old schedule. So. You did fail or no? Yeah. You did pass, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Sorry.
What?
All right.
Goes to show you.
All right. We agree, we respect, okay, sorry. Moving on.
Good now?
Student, online personal protection act compliance.
Yeah, I wanted to take a minute to update the board on where we're currently at with SAPA compliance. To sum up SAPA, it basically is we are entering into agreements with all of our vendors, which we currently do, that will ensure that they are not using any of our student data outside of how they're supposed to. So they're not selling any of our student data. They're not passing that along to third-party vendors. Obviously, we had the conversation at the last board meeting about cybersecurity and the importance of data and knowing where your data is. So SAPA kind of combines all those worlds on what we do if there's a data breach, how we handle that. But the other thing that SAPA does is it forces districts to now put the information, the contracts, the agreements with what they classify as an operator, which is your vendor, online for parents to be able to access. So in December, we purchased a software called the Learning Platform, which is going to house all of our SAPA compliance agreements. It will showcase all of the software that we are using currently in the district. It's quite an undertaking. We have district software that we know we're currently using, but then there's apps and extensions that teachers are using that we also have to capture that information. And we just have to capture the information of vendors that are collecting data. And data can consist of something as small as a student ID, or it can consist of demographic data, depending on, obviously with Google, we have student names and passwords in there. And it's not just educational software. You know, when we use TransFinder for our bus routing software, that houses student data. When we use Meal Magic, you know, that houses student information. It's no more than student IDs, names, eSchool, for example, our student management system houses all demographic data. So we want to ensure that our vendors are using our data correctly. The learning platform, I'm going to share my screen here so you can have a look at what the learning platform looks like. And this will go live July 1st. Once it loads here. So this is the learning platform. It's basically a dashboard of all the district software that we've collected that we know that we're currently using. You can see everything in there from Blackboard to Accelerated Reader and so on. And parents are going to be able to go and click on any piece of software that they choose. And if they choose to look at the agreements, what we have in effect with vendors, our vendors have had to modify some of their agreements to make sure that they comply with SAPA. There'll be a forward-facing page. This is the internal view. So this is what our staff will have access to. So our staff will be able to go in and see, you can see right now everything's pending because we have not uploaded agreements yet, but that will be done by July 1st. So when you go in on July 1st, you'll see it's approved. So our staff can see which software is approved. There'll be an approval process when new software is brought on, because every piece of software moving forward is going to have to go through the vetting system to make sure that all the agreements are in place. So this will go live July 1st. I just want to show you a little bit on the back end. We can capture a lot of information on this. So if you, for example, like Accelerated Reader, if I click on that, we can pick what grades it's used for. The product status is pending. The privacy status is unknown. We can turn that to compliant. Parent consent is required, and so on. Teachers will be able to launch software from this page. So really, it's a one-stop shop for all software that the district uses, whether that's an educational software, finance, anything that collects student data. So we're going to make sure that we fall under compliance by July 1st. We've been working on this for a while. It's involved Dr. Bachman's group, to provide software list, my group, really all the departments at district office, the buildings, which has been great because we've been able to capture what software we're using. And now we have a process and procedure. Not that we didn't have that before to approve software, but this just kind of changes the game to make sure that it really holds our vendors accountable at the end of the day. And then the process of if there's a data breach, we have 10 days to notify parents, and we'll work with our vendors on that. Not that we expect that to happen, but there is some things that are, once it's outside of the Yorkville, it's out of our control. So I just wanted to just keep the board updated on that. That's moving forward. That will be ready to go by July. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
So, Brian, do you know if one of our vendors has a software breach, just from a liability standpoint, whose liability is it?
So it's on, if it's outside of Yorkville software, if it's hosted software, it's on the vendors. Correct. And they have to notify, there's a process, Dr. Brenner, in there that they have to follow, that if there's a data breach, they have to notify that. They have to be able to provide resources such as third-party software to help data prevention and so on.
Right. So that's pretty common among industry.
It is. We've really outsourced a lot of our software has gone to cloud in the last couple of years. There's a couple systems that we keep in-house for certain reasons. But they are, and all of our vendors, this is more of just a formality. They've been doing this for a long time. We just have to now capture and be able to provide a place for parents if they request that information. This information's always been available, but it hasn't had to be formally stored on our website. So now we're going to comply with that.
And so at the same time, this almost becomes a internal, what do they call it? Internal hub where teachers can go to launch the app.
Correct. They can request apps.
Both of those can happen.
Yes, correct. So there's a forward-facing page on our website that is very vanilla, for lack of a better term, that is just going to have our software and the agreements. But then the internal page, you're right, Dr. Burks, teachers can go, they can see exactly what software has been approved, what grades it's for, and they can launch that software. So we'll either have the website in there, we'll have the link to internal resources, and they'll be able to utilize this to launch software.
And that, thank you, Ryan, because then that piggybacks on what we talked about 2 weeks ago, because that will require passwords that
Single sign-on, correct,
Which helps with all that internal provision.
correct. Yep, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the 3-year tech plan shortly.
And you're right, I mean, and even with our learning management systems, they're nothing more than frameworks to launch third parties. So all of those third-party tools also will be available. to
Correct,
parents.
yes, correct, yep. And it really requires that vendors, when they, they talk about vendors as operators. And it requires an operator, if they use a third-party resource to run their product, it also holds them accountable. So it puts a lot of accountability on that they have to follow the specific guidelines, and it's outlined in my board report. Just to make sure that our student data is protected as much as it can be. And as more and more we've talked about, almost everything now is online, and almost everything that we're doing is tied to our student management system. So there's a lot of data being passed back and forth to a lot of software products. And this is everything from Google all the way down to, Mindy's transponder with SetTrain.
It's really an efficient way to have all of the technology applications in one place with staff too.
Without a doubt. And currently, right now, we have bookmark folders that we try to make it easy, but this really is, and it can detail what the product is for. We can add things like when we purchased it, how long the contract is for. You can put it as little or as much information, but right now we're required to have the agreements. That's day one on July 1st that we have the contracts in place. And a lot of school districts across Illinois have adopted the Learn platform. We bought it through a consortium that consists of a lot of DuPage school districts. I believe Huntley, a lot of school districts. We've been on webinars almost every other week about Learn platform. They've been fantastic to deal with. And it's just been a good software. It's very easy to navigate. It'll be very easy to navigate for parents. We'll have a landing page. I've been working with Christine on that, where that's going to sit. So it should be a nice resource for families.
Any other questions or discussion?
So Ryan, is there anything you'll be bringing back to the board?
No, I do not plan on bringing, I just wanted to update the board currently in case you hear SAPA, because it is a big buzzword right now. You just have a better understanding of what steps the district, but this will be in place and live on July 1st.
And it's required.
It is required. We
Is
will.
there a policy in June you might be bringing back?
Yeah, so there is a policy about a privacy officer, very similar to a FOIA officer, that the district can name, that if parents request information, who do they work with at the district level? So we'll be bringing that back to the board as far as just the position that would be. It's no different than when we have FOIA requests, they work with Kathy or so on. So we just have to have a point person, and we're not required, but we're choosing to do that. That if it's submitted a request, who is going to provide that information to the families?
All right, any other committee information?
Yeah, I just wanted to provide the board with a brief update with regards to enrollment for our summer programs. We have this data was from last Thursday, but we have nearly 1,000 students that have enrolled in the summer programs at this point in time. From an elementary and middle school academic standpoint, we have about 450 students that have enrolled in some type of academic program. From a campus standpoint, we have about 275 students that have enrolled in either Camp Imagination, Camp Acceleration, one of the music camps that we're offering this summer. In a high school, we have over 200 students that have enrolled, but that number is slightly deceiving because there could be students in that number that enrolled for 2 classes, therefore counted twice. So these numbers will increase. In my opinion, we're about 60% of where we want to be. So we need to continue to encourage families to engage and participate in our summer camps and our summer academic programs.
Do we know that where we are with that 70% benchmark? Do we know that number yet? I mean, how, with the summer enrollment, targeting students that need those services over the summer?
About 60%.
60%.
We have about 60%
of
of those that we
invited.
invited to the
So
program.
we have 60% of those, okay.
Yeah, and we do have some programs that are open enrollment, so those camps, and then we have a rising mathematician program that is open enrollment for everyone. But our targeted intervention programs, we're about 60% of where we need to be at this point in time. So we still need to continue to reach out to families to ensure that they are enrolled. We've also removed and added some services, removed some barriers and added some services. by providing transportation to all of our experiences this year, which is something that we have not done in the past. So thank you to the transportation team for working through that and helping to remove that potential barrier of some of our families.
One or two other updates. One, just so the board is aware, there's a Senate Bill 654 that has recently gone through the Senate. It's looking at unstructured playtime in grades K through 8 for 60 minutes, mandatory unstructured playtime. It does not count towards PE coursework, so in addition to the PE, there's getting a lot of traction, it's moving towards the House. If anything, I think if it winds up getting passed, it'll be moved to 30 minutes. But just so the board is aware, we'll keep an eye on it. And I'll send you some information so you can be aware and read up on it. But just so that's out there, obviously would impact any schedules at the K level that we have moving forward next fall.
Do you know when they expect to vote on it?
I do not yet. And obviously, we'll be in contact with our local legislators as this moves forward and get more information when they're going to do that.
Do we know the sponsors that?
I do not right now. I don't have the funding out
What
there.
do you guys?
Yep, it'll have it on the link I'll send you.
Right. Thanks.
That'd be interesting.
And then lastly, I'm gonna have Melinda Lasky just give you a quick update on our quarantine parameters and guidelines and just let the board know our recommendation based upon her recent conversation with the health department.
So currently, since the beginning of the school year, we have been following the IDPH guidelines to a T as a district, and the quarantine process was if you are considered a close contact to a positive individual, you're required to quarantine for 14 calendar days. And there was no way of shortening that quarantine period with a negative COVID test. And so looking at our current county and city metrics, our numbers have been greatly reduced, partly based on some of the vaccines that have been put into place and a lot of the masking and cleaning and all of that we do. But so we have talked a lot as a group whether or not we should follow the CDC's change guidelines to a 10-day quarantine. And so I had lots of conversations with our health department, and today they did give us the go-ahead to change our quarantine period to 10 days for close contacts based on our current metrics. But if there is a drastic increase in COVID or hospitalizations or concerns, they will come back and give us different guidance. So I just wanted to give an update to the board and the group that if you all are in agreement, we will move forward with that 10-day quarantine period.
There's no reason not to. Linda, she's been on top of this for, no one knows it better than she does, and we talked about this last week before. This is the right thing to do. It gets kids back to doing things faster, better, in a better way. It makes very good sense. So there's no reason not to.
Tailing off what you said, Dr. Catula, one thing that I've noticed here, just this past school year, especially myself coaching, and then not only just maybe seeing the freshman team, but also having to go to varsity and sophomores, and I'm at a lot of different schools, my daughter playing too. I would say by far, out of all the schools we've been at, Yorkville High School has been the one consistent. They had, I mean, I've had, why are you guys so strict? Well, there's a reason why they're strict. So I can't thank everybody enough, but that, I mean, that starts with the teachers and everybody, just with how they've been prudent and with everything in this whole this whole pandemic we've gone through. And I think it's kind of playing out now on our positive side because y'all have been so proactive with it. So thank you. It's definitely noticeable that how much more kind of on top of it we are.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I concur with Mr. Stefan 100%.
Has there been any discussion, and now that Pfizer's approved the vaccine, it hasn't approved for the vaccine down to 13 years old. And I realize it's just happened. So is there a plan to at least have a discussion to see if we're going to encourage that?
So encourage the vaccine or mandate the vaccine.
I don't think we have to keep it.
Well, we can all encourage it, so we certainly do.
But
But,
will we encourage benefit?
well, so Pfizer actually is applying for a younger, and they're applying for FDA actual approval. Right now, we're on experimental use protocol. So they've applied for full approval of the vaccine. If it gets full FDA approval, that's the significant change. That'll change whether or not, so right now, private colleges and so forth are mandating vaccination. I think that's, we encourage the vaccination, but it is still under experimental use. Once it's FDA fully approved, much like a tetanus shot or a meningitis shot, it potentially could be mandated.
Correct, I understand. It's just that now, today, Pfizer got their approval under experimental use down to 13, which it didn't have before. So as a school, do we want to encourage people as a group to never take the vaccine before we see the I'm not finished with the main information, it's just something to consider.
Again, it's an experimental use medication, so it's every parent's right to make.
No,
their
I
decision.
understand that, but, we have the open vaccination for the high school students, and, and again, who chose it, who didn't, and that's okay, I get that. But, would we do something similar for the other children?
So Dr. Bernard, I can answer that. On Friday, we had the second dose of Pfizer for our students that are 16 or older, and we opened that up to all of the Kendall County residents. And so while we were at the mass vaccination, I did have conversations with the health department about if there is approval down to age 12 or 13, would we want to have another mass vaccination within the district for Kendall County? And so they have done some remodeling and updating to their current clinic and feel that they would be able to have clinics for students of that age. And we could send them there and schedule time, for Yorkville students and then for other cities in the county to do that. So it wouldn't have to be a mass vaccination situation, but they have been able to increase the number of patients that they can, flow
So
through
they
the
can-
clinic.
So I guess, as a school, do we want to at least notify parents that this is available now? If they
So,
want their children.
so when the health department is ready to
To
take
do
that
that.
step, yep, we will definitely work together with them. And we're able to send out emails to students, families of that age range, and provide them notice of the vaccination.
Right, that's all.
And Dr. Petula, in your opinion, do you believe that full approval is coming this summer?
They just applied, what that duration is. and what
I know
data-
some of the
what data
colleges
the
are
FDA
counting
is
on it.
gonna
I'm
want.
just
It's
curious.
gonna take some
I know some of them are hoping it comes this summer for them to be able to do just as one in all schools, actually.
Well, I personally may not disagree with what you guys are asking for. I would just like to at least point out to the board that one of the reasons why we were able to stay open and why we were able to work together was the consistency. And so it doesn't sit well with me to say we're going to listen to the CDC guidelines on something for one thing when you had staff members asking to listen to CDC guidelines on other things, and we said, no, we're going to consistently listen to IDPH and Kendall County Health Department. So while I don't disagree that that might be the best metric, I think you should think twice before saying we're going to go against IDPH and just have them allow this one, because we didn't change what we did based on high metrics early on in this. So why are we changing what we do based on low metrics now? It's just a consistency piece. It's not a personal feeling or a fear that 10 days isn't correct. I would urge you to tread lightly before we are not consistent with IDPH. So I can respond to that. So it is actually within the IDPH updated guidelines that schools are able to work with their local health department and make that determination if it's going to be 14 or 10 days. But the
the decision is really left up to that local health department, but it is, it's actually on, in the FAQ released by IDPH and ISB.
So they do. Okay, they
They allow
And we would not have gone that direction if the Kennel County Health Department said no. And just so the board is aware, I am getting more inquiries from parents about the mask wearing for the fall. So just so the board, there's a belief that local boards make this decision. I have been educating parents just that we have been following IDPH and ISBE, the state board's recommendations and guidance on this, and we'll continue to do so as the summer months come. We're obviously unclear on what the fall will look like. We are also having our principals look at classroom and section sizes to say, what does it look like with 3 feet apart in classrooms? Again, we don't know if state board's going to give us direction or requirements as far as the social distancing. We're concerned about lunches and space, and so really it's going to be what evolves over this summer as we learn more. But just in case the board gets inquiries from parents, as I have seen an increase in those of late, and people want to advocate to somebody, whether it's the governor's office, state board, or IDPH, to have no masks in the fall. And it is Senator Robert Peters who introduced that bill.
So Robert Peters.
Robert Peters, yes, Senator.
Any other updates on student
No,
success?
thank you.
Okay, moving on to operational excellence, and then we have the athletic training services contract renewal.
I want to thank Luke Engelhardt for taking the lead on renewing this contract. A couple years ago, we renewed this contract for 3 years. And so we're coming back again and asking for an additional 3 years. This contract expires at the end of June. And very similar terms to what we had. The one consideration I'd like to just mention is that we're seeing an escalated need for additional athletic training hours. So for now, we feel that we can renew the contract at the current levels, but with the idea that eventually, and we have about 35 dates where we need a second athletic trainer, and right now we pay for that $25 an hour. But Luke wanted to, make sure that I let everybody know that we may have to look at eventually adding like a half-time person with no additional hours, and then again, we would kind of look at that. We do have the right, even if we sign the contract within 30 days, we could renegotiate if we wanted to add an additional resource. So this is something we'll be bringing back at the end of the month for approval.
Mr. Mistake, do you have something?
Yeah.
I know you want to address the board, so please do.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ralph Mispagel, former varsity baseball coach here. The only thing that I was questioning is if there was any action to look at different methods or different entities that can be used for our athletic training. I was curious to know if we could look into the possibility of having an in-house athletic trainer that was, a member of the Yorkville School District versus ATI. I'm not going to sit here and I don't want to talk bad about what ATI is. I'd like to speak to you about some personal experience I've had recently, which concerns me about the level of care. And I've been asked, why do I care anymore? Not being a co chair, I had 4 children that were student athletes that came through here and received great treatment from the athletic trainer at ATI, who's been here for a long period of time. And what I've noticed being a patient there now for the last 4 years, due to an unfortunate accident that I had, I've witnessed a lot of change that's gone on with ATI that concerns me. And part of that is what I've seen with them cutting their staff in their buildings with physical therapists. Myself right now, 7 out of 10 times that I go to physical therapy after having 6 surgeries, I get treated by a physician, what's called a PTA, a physical therapist assistant. And they're great people that work there. They do their best, but they are understaffed, they're undermanned. And I've brought up myself personally, I've brought up the fact that why aren't I being treated by a physical therapist? And part of the reason is they're hiring more physical therapy assistants. And I'm just afraid of what that's gonna do down the pipeline coming through Yorkville High School and what our athletes are gonna be, you know, what type of care they're gonna be given. And I know that people that would be here, they're gonna do their best. My fear is their best gonna be good enough? Knowing how fast we're growing, I'm assuming, and I don't know this for a fact, but whether we get additional sports teams, men's volleyball, you know, any other sports that some of these other schools currently have, would it make sense to maybe look at different options instead of just saying, okay, let's just sign another 3-year contract? You know, and again, for me, witnessing what I've witnessed, it just took me almost 6 months to get medical records from ATI, and I don't want to make this about me, but it took me 6 months to get medical records that I've requested. And if it takes me 6 months, I just don't know what's going to happen down the road with our athletes here. And that's why I'm just curious if we're going to investigate, or the school board or the school could possibly look into hiring some, you know, and again, not saying that ATI isn't going to provide care. I'm just curious right now if they're going to provide the best care for our student athletes. Because I've personally witnessed it at 50 years old that they're so understaffed, they don't have anybody that can even answer the phone at the front desk anymore, because they've taken those positions away while their CEO's making $450,000 a year. I watched a physical therapist assistant treat me last week with 5 patients, and there was one physical therapist in the building. And the physical therapist that's there is great individual, cares, the physical therapy assistants care. But I just want to know how this is going to affect Yorkville High School, because I still do bleed red. And I want to make sure that we have the people in this building that can take care of these kids and that have a relationship with these kids, because I know they've cut their athletic trainer to a 10-month salary. So the gentleman that's here now isn't even going to be paid by ATI through the months of June and July. And that kind of bothers me when you think about the amount of kids that are going to come through these buildings with summer camps for all our sports. And, you know, I'm just curious who's going to be here from the athletic training side, because I just don't know how that's going to affect the care that our kids need and deserve. We're a big school that's having a lot of success. And, you know, to have one athletic trainer and to just use the same people we've had before. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not here to say that they're horrible and they're not going to treat our athletes. I just like to know, are we just buying a Chevy again because that's what we've always bought? You know, just because ATI has been here, and I've received great care from them since 2005. But I also know people that have been let go from ATI due to going public and them cutting staff. And I want to know who's going to be affected by that. That really concerns me.
I can answer a couple of those questions, I guess. We did look at a couple of different options. So one was potentially bringing it in-house right now based on the volume and what we need. That wasn't sort of a cost-effective, viable volume at this time. Not to say that that won't be something that as we accelerate, as we add some of those sports, that's not something we could justify. Additionally, Luke had looked, Rush Medical Group had talked about potentially adding, I believe they called it an athletic training outreach position. So that was something that we absolutely were interested in. They have since decided not to expand their practice and offer that position. So that no longer became a viable option. So those are two things that we did look at before kind of making this recommendation. In terms of the summer, the contract does include 20 hours per week in June and July. So I doesn't list a specific person, but there certainly would be that commitment to providing those services for activities that are going on during the summer.
Mindy, though, Ralph brings up a really good point in the contract, and I didn't read, I apologize, I didn't catch all the details, but for us, very good point of quality of the support. Does the contract direct that a certified trainer is indeed fulfilling those services appropriately, and not these assistants that are not as, that do have the level of certification needed?
I believe that it does. I will look
If you
at that
could
and
double check that,
and reconfirm that. Because it is the full-time,
Yeah, and
you know.
because those are for
training.
different certification levels, if any certification at all, and those are, those are different levels of service that our student athletes would receive.
Sure.
Yeah, I would, thank you, Coach, for your comments. I really appreciate that. I would advocate for a full-time in-house trainer as well. I mean, having coached here for 19 years and seeing the amount of work that it takes for one trainer to do the job that's expected is unbelievable, from bouncing from field to field, from the academy to back over here on certain days when other, several different events are going on. Not to mention the opportunities for student athletes who have time in their day perhaps to go get treatments when they need it rather than just the morning or just after school. I know you said, Minnie, that at this point that the cost effectiveness may not be there, but I think at some point we need to think about the benefits of maybe spending more money for what we're getting, for the value that we're getting. And again, I don't know those numbers. I don't ever claim to know those numbers, but I think it's something that maybe we need to look at. Maybe have Mr. Engelhardt create a proposal that an in-house full-time trainer might be what we need. And I defer to Dr. Catula as well, with your expertise on what might be the issue there. But at least based on my observations of having coached in the district for so long, I think it's long overdue.
And I just want to clarify too, I'm not an attorney, but based upon my reading of the agreement, there also is a non-solicitation clause in there. So even if our current trainer, if we were to break the contract and go in-house, those individuals working for us now would not be someone we could bring in, individuals we could bring on board right away. There's probably, if I remember correctly, a 12-month basically non-compete. So just, I want to be aware of that. So.
Yeah, from a quality standpoint, so the same people who have been our trainers are going to continue to be here. So their connection with ATI is as much commercial as anything else. We have the ATI sign, we have the ATI commercials, but John's connection with the physicians and the medical community is the most important thing that he has. Our sports physician for the football team is Dr. Faras, who's on field. We always have a physician on field at all times working with John. For concussions, Dr. Faras and Dr. Patella, they're connected all the time. So for the actual injury going from trainer to, and then increasing the medical care is always going to go through the physician, which John has an excellent relationship with all the physicians in the community. So I'm very confident that that's a high level. The issues you're seeing at the actual locations, I can't speak to, but I can speak to the fact that John, and it's a high quality of a training situation there. And he does have like I said, an excellent, I talk to him on a regular basis during the regular season, so do the other sports physicians. So I'm very confident that our kids are taken care of it in the best possible way.
And I second that. I'm one of John's biggest supporters. John's been here for 10 years and he bleeds the school. And I know he cares. The issues that I see though is he gonna be the one around come the summertime when there are camps and everything else, because they have cut hours. And that's what bothers me from that perspective of we're looking at a company that's losing valuable members of their staff for one reason or another. And I can't speak for those people, but I know people that have treated me and taken great care of me, and I probably wouldn't be walking without them. They're no longer there. And that bothers me as a former coach here and as a former parent of former students. I just want to make sure that this community and this school is getting the best care possible. And what concerns me is them cutting. Our athletic trainer has been cut, who's been here for 10 years. He is not considered a full-time employee anymore. Well, I don't know what they'll consider it, but he does not work under contract through the months of June and July through ATI. And in speaking with him, and again, he's his own man, he could speak to this himself, but I don't believe that he would be the individual here in the summer months because I don't think he can afford it. And that's coming through intense conversations with him.
There's 2 points I wanted to make. One is that the contract does stipulate, that it has to be a certified athletic trainer, not assistant. Second point I wanted to make is some of the rights for people that
And I think Mr. Engelhardt is on the Zoom call. And Luke, anything you want to share with the board?
Yes, thank you for the discussion, and just to add on that I agree, our school is growing. We're going to have increasing opportunities, at least we hope, for more sports over the next few years, and that's why I really wanted to put that piece in, that we know that it's going to be a need. These last 2 years have been really different. We went for 6 months without really any sports, the last 4 being really just inundated with sports. So, the proposal and the nice thing about it is it puts us in position where we have somebody that's certified. And I really hope that John stays on with ATI. He's been an outstanding subcontractor for at least 10 years. He's developed great relationships, with our staff and our students and coaches and all parties. So he's been great. And at some point we think that there's going to be that need. It's just the hours and when I calculated it for next year, 35 dates is what I guessed and estimated looking at the schedule for next year, and then even what last year would have been. And I think then there's going to be more to it that we would need to detail on what that additional coverage is going to do. And we can amend the contract to add that at, I believe, any point. We have to give a notice to do that if it's going to be a 0.5 or whatever that might be. But that's the nice thing. And when David Travis and I have talked in depth about this, just having the incremental approach of maybe possibly looking at 0.5 in a year from now, to after that to see where we're at. And then, regardless if we decided to, hey, we need to look at having an in-house person, if, we need somebody here during the day, during the flex periods to have our student athletes looked at, because that's going to be possibly a new thing, or if our field experience program develops where more students that want to get involved there, and we find these different opportunities where, ATI is not going to do that. They do different things that we might ask them to do. I think that we could possibly propose that, but really why, I just went down the route of the renewal is to, one, lock us in for next year. I think that with our person that's in place now, I don't think if we were to open up a position that he would be allowed to even, apply for it. I think that would be something that would be a different conversation. But, I think all of those are valid points. We know that sports medicine has become a bigger topic with concussion training and return to play and all the things that go in there and documentation. It's a lot. So I think I'm glad that you guys see that and emphasize the value of having an additional sports medicine person in the building. And I think the nice thing about this contract is we can amend it to increase through ATI or through our own, through our own district.
Thank you, Mr. Engelhardt. I appreciate it. I'm just spitballing to this kind of an add-on to the potential hiring of a full-time trainer in-house, but also that brings up the possibility potentially of field experience for our high school kids. Right here in-house, potentially working under a full-time in-house trainer and getting great field experience that might be part of that experience that we've really had some great success with.
I don't know if some of them will be qualified, but I think ATI, I know that Luke, you could attest to this more than anything. I know we've had interns of students in programs at the college level.
Yeah, yes. And it is difficult.
We've had high school students.
Yeah, yes, Dr. Burks. We've had Aurora University students intern That's nice to have additional hands in the room. And the same thing with high school students this year that took part in the field experience program. And that's where I think there's other ways that we can expand if we were to go down the route of looking at the possibility of a in-district person. Now, that's not common. I did a lot of research on other school districts in our area, and the vast majority do go through contractors. And I'm guessing is that it's a cost. It's very cost effective to contract out and have a subcontractor. And we've been very fortunate to have a very good subcontractor in John Strosky. So they've been reliable in terms of when we needed an additional person. That's my biggest concern is when we have two events that are high risk for injury, we need to have an athletic trainer on site at both. For example,
What about the field experience? When you have injury, you can't have
I
high school students.
I'm just
no,
saying-
they wouldn't be allowed
I'm
to.
saying they would be
I
the ones
understand
doing
that,
it.
but I
That's not what I'm
definitely,
saying.
that's the gap that we're seeing in the future.
No,
Okay. So Luke, you believe that the contract has the flexibility that you need because of the clauses that we have. And as we see the demand going, you will continue to communicate to us as need be.
Yes, I think regardless if we were to propose an in-house, in-district athletic trainer, we would still want to keep a relationship with the contractor. ATI, anybody that would provide a great service. There's a couple others that we did look at and consider, but ATI with the relationship over the last 10 years, it was hard not to continue that with what we've had. But I think because of the possibility of having a double up and having multiple events, you would need to have a relationship with a contractor to provide that second person, regardless of having an in-house or not.
And there's no capping, steering a student athlete that's been injured to have therapy at ATI if they opt to go elsewhere, correct? No, they go where they want.
Right.
Yes.
A lot of good points. I think the end point is in the therapy itself is what you're getting at. And that we're fortunate we have John here, but you're right, the contract is with ATI, not with John. And if something happens with him, but we do have the out if we're not happy with the next person that comes, right? So we can judge the quality. If we don't feel the quality is adequate, we can change. So it's a contract that gives us some stability for a while, but if we're not happy with the outcomes, we have the ability in this contract to change. Very open.
And I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about it. That was my only, I felt obligated as a former coach and as a parent of athletes, student athletes that came through these doors. I just felt it was my obligation because not everybody has to go for physical therapy. And again, I want to reiterate that the care I receive and that I'm sure most people receive is they're giving everything they can. What concerns me is how handcuffed they are when I'm watching a physical therapist and there's only one in their building that has to answer phones. He has to do what they used to have people in there doing, and now those people are gone. And when you have a physical therapy assistant that's working on 5 patients at a time, now luckily for me, I can get through my program that takes somewhere between an hour and 30 and 2 hours. They want to be pushed out in 45 minutes. And I know this for a fact, they need people coming through the doors. And I understand that as a business model, you have to bring patients in. But I just felt obligated to let people know that their level of care there has gone down, and that concerns me. And I couldn't live with myself if I didn't say something about it, because I've spoken to the people there that I can speak to, and I know it's a business, and I get that, and it's about making money, like every business is. I just witnessed the type of care that some people myself included at times, gets. Because without certain people there, again, I hate to say it, I wouldn't have been able to walk in here today, but I just want to make sure that down the road, the people that we get in this building are the best people, which I think we have right now, I'm his biggest fan and biggest supporter. I don't think there's anyone that works harder in his craft than what John does. I felt obligated to ask the question, are we looking at different options? One being the in-house an in-house athletic trainer. And again, it wasn't to degrade the name ATI because they've done great by me. However, I've noticed there's a lot of change there, and I don't think that people realize the amount of change that's happening and what it could do to Yorkville High School down the road. If it continues that way in the main practice of pushing people in and out the door, I just want to make sure that we get the best possible care here, because this is all I care about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Coach.
It's a 3-year contract with a 30-day calendar written notice. Either party determined without clause.
Right.
So I think that's really.
It keeps it open. Great.
Thank you, Ralph.
Thanks,
Thanks a
Rob.
lot, Rob.
Thanks,
And this
Coach.
will be brought back on May 24th.
Okay, next we have seal coating and stripping.
So we've just recently put together a bid for seal coating and striping for all of our district parking lots. We put the advertisement out in local newspapers last week, Thursday on May 6th, and we'll be doing a formal bid opening on May 20th, Thursday, May 20th. So we're hoping to award a contract pending the Board of Education approval at the next board meeting on May 24th. So this was just basically informational to let you all know that we have gone out to bid for a new seal coating and striping contractor.
Do you expect the bids to be in line with what you've seen before, or is it going to be accelerated like a lot?
Yeah, so I'm nervous about it being a little bit higher than what has come in the past with how everything's increasing. And we also, there's different ways that you can seal coat. You can spray it, you can squeegee it. So I'm sure we're going to get a lot of different price ranges. So we'll wait and see what comes in, but I'm hoping that we can stay around the 100. And we usually typically spend about 150,000 a year on the parking lots. So
Then we have the 3-year calendar.
Yes, thank you. So in the board packet, I included a technology audit and the technology plan that goes into great detail. But today I'm going to just present some highlights in each area on the 3-year tech plan for the board. We took a different approach this year on the tech plan. We had our department audited from top to bottom on both from a staffing standpoint to a process and procedure standpoint to all of our hardware and so on. So the audit findings are really driving our technology plan this year. I worked with a company called Education Collaborators, and we built the technology plan to mirror the strategic plan. So you're going to see objectives and strategies around different areas that focus on everything from infrastructure and staffing. So to walk you through the plan, this is our technology mission statement. I think this really supports everything that we do from a department that we're committed to providing a secure, reliable technology environment that leverages innovative and collaborative technologies to support educational and business operations and processes. Our last plan was presented to the board in 2017. This plan was slated to come to the board in 2020, and I'll talk a little bit about why. Obviously, I'm sure you know why it didn't come to the board in 2020, but here were some of the highlights of the last plan to show you some of the major accomplishments that the technology department and the district accomplished. We implemented Chromebooks in grades 4 through 12, so about 5,000 devices. We've added access points in our building. We've completely replaced our teacher laptops to new Dell laptops from the old Lenovo ones. We've integrated Canvas in grades 7 through 12, which was no small feat. We've upgraded the district's internet bandwidth twice during that time. We've upgraded the district's telephone system. We replaced all the copiers district-wide. We implemented online student registration, which was, Mrs. Anderson had a very important role in that. That's been very beneficial to our parents. And we've replaced all of the classroom projectors district-wide. So from a high-level view, these are some of the larger projects that the technology department completed during that time. To give you a little bit of a timeline, we started this process back in February of 2020. Obviously, we had the COVID shutdown in March, which kind of delayed where we were going from a technology standpoint. And in some ways, the COVID shutdown really opened our eyes of implementation and how quickly we turned things around. If you remember, we rolled out Chromebooks in 2 days to all grades, K through 3. So, it's to the board's credit, and we've talked about this, that by investing in infrastructure in the past, we are able to pivot very, very quickly. And that's something that I'm very, very proud of from a staff standpoint. My plan was to bring this in the fall, and then obviously I had gotten sick, so I apologize that we're a year off. But we restarted the process back up in January. We had a technology audit that consisted of about 190 pages of questions from various departments. It was myself, it was my staff, it was Dr. Baughman, that focused on curriculum and instruction. We reviewed the audit findings in March, and then we developed the tech plan end of March, beginning of April. So the tech plan will really drive all of our decision makings. Everything I bring to the board moving forward, once the plan is approved, we'll reference back to the tech plan so you can see the area that it falls under. We broke down the technology plan into four key areas: infrastructure reliability, technology and information systems, communications and collaboration, and technology standardization. Each goal area has a focus on currently where we're at. I'm not going to read through this. Obviously, it's on the slide, but our department is responsible now for 11,000 devices. That's in infrastructure, network, Chromebooks, teacher laptops, and so on. We've grown a lot in the last 5 or 6 years. Everything that we purchase from a district, whether it's student services, finance, HR, involves technology. I mean, now my student management system team is running reports and pushing data and pulling data on almost everything we do daily. So we've grown a lot in that. Some of the areas we're really going to focus on over the next 3 years that we've talked about, some of the items that will be coming soon here down the line, is we're going to upgrade our firewall. We have an opportunity to do that through the Digital Divide Grant to address some of the cybersecurity concerns at the last meeting. This is going to allow us to increase our bandwidth. Right now, we have 5 gig out to the internet. We're only able, under our current firewall, to use 3 gig. I met with my network administrator this afternoon, and we're actually going to be able to reutilize our firewall for some internal resources. So we're actually going to put our servers behind another firewall. So we'll actually have 2 layers of defense from the outside world. Something that we're going to look at and planning and implementing is cybersecurity training for all employees. This will look different from groups. Dr. Brooks, you mentioned last time about email training and what to look for when phishing attacks occur, and so on. We're going to perform penetration tests on all of our critical servers every 2 years. And what we've decided is we're going to not have the same vendor do that every other year. So you get a different set of eyes on it. You get a different set of tests. So really we can see if there's any vulnerabilities in our network. That could become a yearly thing depending on what is being implemented at the time. But obviously there's a substantial cost to that. So that's something that we're going to take a look at. We want to make sure that all of our operating systems are up to date. That's something that, with everything that we're doing from Chromebooks to Windows machines to Heather's heating controls, everything runs on a different platform. So making sure that all the Windows updates and everything, that's a high focus on infrastructure. What I'm really looking forward to is, we want to do some tabletop scenarios on some disaster recovery stuff. So when we talk about data breaches, or we want to be able to run through exercises on the front end and be proactive and know if that ever happens, we have a plan in place to address those. And also coming later tonight is a new wireless controller, so we can expand our wireless infrastructure to support all the K-3 devices that will be coming back in the fall. Technology and information systems, we want to create a streamlined and reliable end user system that focuses on consistency. This is also, I think, to me, this is I think the most important goal area of our tech plan. It's really going to focus on our staff and my technology staff and becoming efficient, going to a more role-based help desk. We started to centralize our help desk. Right now I have techs spread across the district, and we wanted to go to a more centralized model and spread out. We accomplished half of that, and then COVID hit, and we couldn't have that many people in a single area. So we're still working through some of those challenges. Right now, I currently don't have a tiered system. So I don't have level 1 help support. I don't have level 2 help support. Everybody's kind of lumped into a group, and my staff does amazing. I mean, they do an amazing job, but I'd really like to get to a more role-based. It comes in at level 1, it gets escalated to level 2, and then if that needs to go to my network administrator or myself, there's actually a process, and we're going to get there. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some restructuring. It's going to take some additional people, but I think within the next 3 years, we can have a really robust and more efficient technology department. Industry standard for computer technicians, 2 devices is 1 technician every 350 devices. I realize, well aware, we're never going to get to that. But I think if we can get one tech to support every 650 to 700 devices, I think that'll put us in a really good place to where our techs aren't getting burned out. They're being able to focus on whether it's Chromebooks, teacher devices, network, and that'll really help us move forward. I'd really like to have a phone support help desk. Right now, everything's done through ticketing systems and chat. It would be nice if we had a place where you could call in and get a live body to help support technology issues. And this is something that I really want to get to. I know we've talked internally about opportunities for kids outside of the normal 8-hour school day, our staff outside of the 8-hour school day, to be able to provide tech support for users about 16 hours a day. Because we have our staff starting before 6 a.m. and they're working until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. If something breaks, I mean, like I say, when technology is pivotal and they're using it for everything, whether it's grades or something like that, I want them to be able to get a hold of somebody on my team to help support that. And we would look at, when we're doing staffing and restructuring, moving to more, having techs spread out throughout the day to support that. And then obviously, ensuring that we're SOPA compliant, which we talked about earlier on. Some of the other things is, we're always making sure that we're replacing our systems on a cycle. Our copiers will be up in 2 years. We're going to look at either extending that agreement or changing it out. We've been very happy with our vendor. We're going to research and vet a new potential student management system. If you remember, eSchool was bought by PowerSchool a couple of years ago. There's been a lot of changes, some good, some bad, and our district's grown a lot. So we'd like to get to, or at least possibly get to, a system that supports everything under one house, as opposed to using this vendor for this vendor for this vendor for this, which goes back to the cybersecurity piece. We'd like to work with the high school, and we talked to the high school a little bit, and I think they're very supportive. It's just finding a way to get there, of a student help desk. That also alleviates the need for my technology staff. We could do an internship program. We've worked with Melissa Wojcicki in the past, and we've had students intern in our department before, so that's been beneficial. And then we're obviously focusing on a single sign-on and having that, for our end users be able to access. And we're almost there. We're to access all programs using the same login. Communication and collaboration is obviously another thing that my staff is going to work on over the next 3 years. We talked about our ticketing process, the escalation. I'm really looking at getting my technology staff Google certified. I think it puts a little emphasis on, we're a Google district. We live, eat, breathe Google. That my staff gets, including myself, gets level 1 Google certified. So that's going to be something that we're looking at early on next year. We're going to do customer service training in the technology staff, because I think it's important. Whether, my staff now is dealing with parents daily because of our remote kids. They're dealing with students, they're dealing with end users, and how to properly communicate with those groups and those individuals is something we're going to look at at this summer for my staff. I'm gonna look at publishing a biannual technology newsletter to do a better job of updating our staff on changes and what we're looking at and feedback. We're gonna conduct an annual technology needs survey. We currently do this now, but this one would strictly focus on tech and tech in the classroom, and does the staff currently have what they need to succeed? And then we want to offer Google Workplace apps training on Institute days. And that might be, you know, when Dr. Blockman submits proposals, that someone from my staff would focus on Google Sheets or Google Docs or Google Forms, to really provide some of that training that some of our staff has asked for. And then standardization, you know, over the last 12 years, we've been lucky enough that we've standardized on technology. Nothing's really piecemeal together anymore. There's a plan, there's a procedure and an implementation process on everything we do. Our device replacement cycle is important, not only for our staff knowing that they're going to get devices every 2 or 3 years. It's been great for Mindy from a financial standpoint. We know exactly how much money we're spending on what year. We have the next, I think, 6 years planned out of our lease cycle and how much that's going to cost the district. We want to maintain a 10% device spare loaner pool. This has been huge because of the number of devices from a staff level, a student level that are breaking. You'll see coming down, I think 2 items that I'm requesting 400 Chromebooks. Those are strictly for our loaner pool. We currently have about 1,000 devices at the high school that are scheduled for repair right now. We want to conduct regular technology skills training for all faculty and staff members. This was taking place, but I think there can be more of an emphasis on it moving forward. And then we're always investigating, and you know, we do a great job in the district of working with our departments, you know, on our cabinet meetings on what the needs are. We're investigating, you know, technologies, whether it's software, hardware, communication platforms. We want to make sure that it's adopted and is appropriate for what we're using, that we're not just buying a piece of software that we're going to use and then it just falls off a cliff after a year. So I do want to say, you know, that I believe that I'm truly lucky that I get to be the face of this department. But it's people like, you know, Spencer over here and my staff that really make everything work really well. And they're the heartbeat of the technology department. And I can't thank them enough. The staff knows that. They've been great through COVID. We have not added a new employee since 2017 in my tech department. We did not add anyone during COVID. They've been efficient. They've been flexible. We found new ways to keep, you know, Dr. Chimp and I were talking the other day. We found a lot of ways to keep the norm in our district, whether it was, you know, boxcar races at YS and all the kids couldn't be together like they normally do. So we streamed it through 4 or 5 rooms. And that flexibility and adaptability is because we built the infrastructure to allow that. And it's been great. So I wanted to give you a 10,000 foot overview. This is not everything that the technology department is going to do over the next 3 years. This doesn't include all the stuff that is just brought in, depending on what way we go. But we can support it, that's the one thing I'm most proud of is it's not very often where we say, at least from a technology end, that we can't do anything.
What do you see for growth in your personnel in the next 3 years?
There's a couple needs areas that I need to address. An assistant network administrator is something that I think we would benefit from, both from a cross-training standpoint, and I don't have a backup in that department right now. So I think we're at risk because of that. I think it'll help troubleshooting with some of the higher end network stuff. It'll help with installations, but it also will free up my network administrator to focus on some of that disaster recovery stuff while the day in and day out stuff is going on. So that is a need. And probably an additional, I don't have a number for you, Dr. Brenner. It really depends on how we trend and what route we want to go with some Chromebook repairs and stuff, but 2 to 3 additional techs over the next probably 2 to 5 years to really support what we're doing. If we can get to a more role-based department with specific responsibilities, I think we can actually streamline the process. It's not going to be adding bodies. It's going to be, you know, really, these people have these roles. We got a level 1 help desk. It can escalate to level 2. We have specialists, like Spencer's my Zoom specialist, but at the end of the day, he's classified no different as a computer technician, but he's taken that. So anything Zoom related right now, I'm going to Spencer. I have a camera and fob technician that focuses on that. So I really think it'll allow the techs to go to the right resource and actually limit the troubleshooting, which will make us more efficient.
So you have solution managers or solution owners, so certain members of your staff own certain solutions.
Correct.
To allow for specialization.
Yes, and really, one of the things we struggle with right now is there's not a lot of growth paths in my department. And it's just because of how it's structured. Like, if we had a tiered system and then we had techs that had specialization, there would be growth in my department. And that's really what we want to get to. We have great people. I have great people on my staff. And then finding ways for them to improve, whether it's through education, through classes, that they can grow into roles, is ideally where I'd like to get.
Yeah, that makes sense. You get better motivation.
Correct. And that's something that we've talked about from an administration level, and how do we get there? And obviously that's going to be working with Troy and Dr. Bloffman and Mindy from a financial standpoint. But everyone's been very supportive. It'll just be the implementation process of that.
And thank you, Ryan, for also adding to this. Vendors running their own security audits, obviously there's a vested interest.
Absolutely.
So bringing in an outside
Yep.
vendor to do a penetration analysis of our actual liability, particularly with cybersecurity issues. Thank you for adding that to the.
Yeah, we talked internally, my network administrator and I, and that was the consensus after the meeting, that was something that would make the most sense. I mean, an audit's an audit, but different eyes on an audit are sometimes.
An actual third party.
Correct. Yes, correct, right.
Because the vendors will always tell you their systems are secure.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Any other questions?
Great job.
Yeah, really nice. I love that you can start seeing the integration between the teaching and learning department and the tech department. That's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, everything that Dr. Bachman brings forward from a technology standpoint, we discuss at length, and vice versa. If I bring something forward, we're talking about how it impacts teaching and learning. And that's been great. That's really been done over the last 3 or 4 years that we focused on that.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Purchase of wireless.
Now it's time to spend some money to implement the 3-year technology plan. You know what?
Didn't take long, Ryan.
No, I told you they were coming quick. We had an opportunity through, I know Mike Vargas had updated the board 2 months ago about the digital divide grant. We talked about some of the technology that were coming out of that. Our wireless controller was currently purchased in 2012. It's been great. It still runs. The problem that we have is we have maxed out the number of wireless access points that we can put on the wireless controller, and in the same time added 1,600 devices onto the network at our elementary level. So by purchasing this wireless controller, it'll bring us up to the latest and greatest piece of hardware through Cisco. It'll allow us to expand our wireless network and include more access points, so we can put them at the lower grade levels, so that we can make sure that those devices are covered in those areas. This is paid for through the digital divide grant. So there's no direct impact cost to the district. It's not coming out of local funds. We would look to, if board approved, at the end of the month, we would purchase that device right away and implement it over the summer and start adding access points. So when students come back in the middle of August, they'll be able to be anywhere in the building and connect.
All right, and then we have content filtering firewall.
This was talked about at length during the cybersecurity discussion last month. Our firewall is probably our #1 line of defense. Our Palo Alto firewall we currently have is fantastic. We're recommending that the district upgrade to another Palo Alto firewall. We did this 3 years ago to support the last bandwidth. The problem is it will not support the current bandwidth, so we'll be able to increase our bandwidth for our end users. They'll get a full 5 gig to the internet. We'll be able to capitalize on some of the new safety and security protocols that are in place. Again, this is purchased through the digital divide grant. It would be implemented over the summer, and we're going to then reutilize our current firewall for some internal processes moving forward. Palo Alto's been fantastic. swear by. It's one of the best firewalls we've had. It runs, it does great reporting features. And I feel confident from a security standpoint, which, you know, is obviously our number one thing, that this addresses those concerns.
All right. And the purpose of additional.
Last time you'll hear from me tonight, I promise. Obviously, the district has added grades 1, 2, and 3, and also kindergarten, but kindergarten is on tablets. We've added devices through COVID. The plan moving forward is for first, second, and third graders to have devices next year, which we fully support. What we need to do from a technology department is I need to have hot swappable spares on hand at any given time, because our motto in the technology department is if your device is broke, you have to have a device. So we're always it's always a hot swap program. The problem is we're running out of spares. So some of the devices that we utilize that are coming off year 3 of lease, out of the however many that may be, maybe a quarter of them are still functional and they're on their last leg. So this would be, again, purchased through the Digital Divide Grant. It allows us to get some hot swappable spares at the beginning of the school year to support when students come back, because that's always the wild card, is when students come back from summer after having their devices all summer, we don't know what's going to be working and what's not going to be working. So we get a very mad rush at the beginning of the year of my mouse doesn't work or my keyboard doesn't work, and this will help us support that.
And then any other committee information updates?
It's a lot.
Not have an approval yet.
Yeah.
True. Wait till next, May 24th, right?
What's good?
No, thank you for the audit too.
Yeah, if you get a chance, I mean, it was great feedback for us. It's something that we haven't had done in a while, and it provided great information. And it really allowed us the plan isn't 100%, it's built behind the audit and the district strategic plan. So we had 2 great documents to build the tech plan off of, and it's a great foundation to run. So I love the process. It was a lot of front end work by a lot of people. I mean, my network administrator, my techs, Dr. Baldwin had a section to fill out. But the feedback and info that you could then take what we're currently doing, and there's a lot of praise in the audit findings. If you get a chance to read the audit findings, we're doing a lot of great things. And then there's some industry standard stuff that schools are always behind on, but this plan addresses us to get to that point, which I was really happy with.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right, community of learners and internal substitute.
It's awesome.
Okay.
So for the 2021 school year, due to COVID, we implemented an internal nurse substitute position just for the school year. And so Student Services would like to recommend that we keep that internal nurse substitute moving into next school year. I pulled some numbers, and from August until March 31st, we had 161 nurse absences. We have 12 building nurses, 1 internal substitute, and 2 one-to-one nurses. And the amount of exposures and quarantines and, being sent home due to sickness, the filling a nurse sub position is very difficult. And we have about 14 to 16 nurse subs on our list, but most of them work other positions throughout the school week. So they fill in when they're available. And it's very difficult to get that, the building covered. And many times, if there is not a nurse up, the school administrator has to step in and cover the nurse's office. So we would like to recommend that we keep the 1.0 full-time nurse up for the 21-22 school year.
So do you think you'll be able to keep the nurse for that salary?
So I would like to keep the current full-time nurse substitute that we have on staff. She would continue in that position.
And she would continue for that salary?
Yes.
For the RNs, that's a pretty typical salary range.
School RN, yes. Any questions?
Early childhood.
We're just bringing back a job description on a position that we approved back in 2018 for the early childhood coordinator. We've actually expanded the position, and you can see in the red line, the version that's on there, the areas in which we've expanded it. The person's actually going to be taking on some of the responsibilities of a retired person that we've had working for us about 75 days each year. So we'll be bringing this back to the next board meeting for, well, actually, I'm sorry. So we're looking for a motion to accept the job description and put it on file.
Move to accept the early childhood job description as presented.
Aye.
And then we have some teaching and learning.
Yeah, we're proposing two K-8 teaching and learning coordinators to fill in as Dr. Baughman steps into my role for next year. I'm not sure if you guys can open the PDF. I'm not able to open it. I'm wanting to look at it.
We have.
Okay. I can't. Anyway, see if anybody has any questions relative to these positions, any additions that Dr. Baughman would like to add.
Yeah, as you can see, just outlined in the job description itself, these positions would help oversee the vertical alignment of our K-8 curriculum, work with professional development, teaching and learning strategies, assessments, evaluation programs, a lot of the day-to-day stuff that I had done in the past 5 years.
My understanding would still be involved.
Yeah, these would be direct reports to me. Still, I would still be involved in the oversight and responsible for all the current programs. It just provides me with some more time and to take on some of Mr. Courtney's responsibilities.
And as well, it looks like it sits by itself. It's really part of a broader organizational plan that Dr. Schiff is also.
Yeah, we're
communicated to us.
gonna evaluate, obviously, and as I told the board, we're gonna come back to you in the fall, September and October, with, as Dr. Marcel is retiring after next year. And we'll look to see what the future holds from a district standpoint. Originally, we were looking to fill this with a K-6, 7, 12. So, but after we went through the process, Dr. Baughman and I came back together and talked about providing the K-8 support with 2 individuals. There are 3 teacher on special assignments, or will be potentially positions vacant. We anticipate filling 2 of those. One of those will provide more target support to 9-12, as Mr. Travis and his team work through their initiatives for this year and work that's got to be done by high school. And the other one will be working in the EL area of support. And then we won't look to fill the 3rd one.
Okay, so need a motion.
Motion to approve the K-8 teaching and learning coordinator positions as presented.
Moved and seconded. Additional comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Then we have athletic.
Yeah, at the end of the last school year, the athletic director that we had for the middle school had resigned and moved on. We didn't fill that position for this current school year with all the uncertainty and what was going on with the student activities as well as the sports. Now that we're moving towards the next year, we still see the need for having someone in that position, but we've reformulated the position into a release, much like what we do with Mr. McGuire in this building. So 0.5 release and then a provide all the supports we need for the students with athletics and student activities without adding another administrator back into the school.
I think the middle school is getting very big too. And
Well, you remember.
I hope this is enough.
Yeah, well, you remember we had,
We want all those kids doing something all the time.
mhm.
So, you know, we've always, as a board, supported, that's a very, you know, that age group is really important that they're staying active. So I hope that's enough, but if it's not, you know, having all those kids engaged all the time, I think this is where we want it.
And this is definitely more of what a traditional, athletic director, middle school salary type schedule looks like. I remember before this situation around why we kept a certain person on when that role was a little bit, you filled definitely some different roles just outside of athletic director. So, yeah, it makes sense to go back to the natural kind of order how things go on that. But yeah, you're right, we're gonna have to keep an eye on it, because it's not like that middle school is getting any smaller, or, you know, I mean, the kids are gonna be ready to get back to activity next year for sure, so.
That's a very good point. You know, see if this can be adequate control.
I think next year we'll tell, we get the right person in place.
Any other committee updates?
Yeah.
And on to new business, we have some motions, please.
Motion to approve the co-curricular information as presented. Second.
Moved in second, additional discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We have some resignations.
Motion to approve the resignations as presented.
Second.
Moved in second, additional discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And then we have some hires.
Motion to approve the summer school hires as presented. Second.
Moved in second, additional discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kapowitz,
Yes.
Dr. Schumacher,
Yes.
Dr. Brenner,
Yes.
Dr. Katsula,
Yes.
Mr. Sefner,
Yes.
Ms. Shields,
Yes.
and Dr. Burke.
Yes. And then we have some hires.
Motion to approve the hires as presented.
Second.
Moved in second, and any additional discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Schumacher,
Yes.
Mr. Kapowitz,
Yes.
Dr. Brenner,
Yes.
Dr. Katsula,
Yes.
Mr. Sefner,
Yes.
Ms. Shields,
Yes.
and Dr. Burke.
Yes. Any closing comments?
Dr. Burks, want to recognize, we had two of the just recently approved coordinators that were in attendance tonight, Mr. Nate Kimball and Dr. Leslie Crescent. If you want to stand up and wave, say hello.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks for sitting through our meeting tonight.
That's a lot.
Well, they've sat in on a lot of meetings, so, I think we all, there was a really nice vote. It's good to see teachers move up to TOSAs, move up to these sorts of positions, so congratulations. All right, and then executive session. Gary,
Motion to move into executive session for the purpose of discussing employment, employment compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel of the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body, term is committee. 5 ILCS 120/2C1. The purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussion whether a particular parcel should be acquired. 5 ILCS 120/2C5. Student disciplinary cases. 5 ILCS 120/2C9. And litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of a particular public body has been filed and is pending in a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that such an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be reported and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. 5 ILCS 120/2 C9.
Second.
All those, oh, we need a roll call.
Dr. Katsula?
Yep.
Ms. Shields?
Yes.
Dr. Brenner?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Schumacher?
Yes.
Mr. Sefner?
Yes.
Dr. Yes.
Tim, will you guys call me?
That's perfect.
Okay, put you on speaker. Sounds like a plan, guys. Annie, can you call my phone? Yeah. No.
I might,
We're gonna close it.
no, it's next week. No.
Okay,
it's
good
next
night,
Friday.
Ashley.
Week from Friday.
Go ahead.
Won't be on the 24th.
Who is not coming to graduation?
I am not.
Everyone else is coming?
Think so.
All right.
Remember, when I made these plans, I wasn't supposed
I
to be on
know.
the board.
At all, I understand.
Listen, we started to trend nice for weather. It is.
I still have my fur coat.
In April, we're at, of course, remember?
My older brother bought a condo, I'm driving a car down there.
For all of us graduates, let's put our names. in it,
Oh, yeah.
and We'll all pick out, we'll end up picking out different kids, I'll end up handing mine to Will. Throw the kids a curveball.
Oh, yeah, you guys should know how to work.
They'll think it's, they'll think it's,
Fairly good.
they think they're getting their diploma from their parent, but it's actually.
Yeah.
So the moms find out.
Oh,
You
man.
want hats or no hats?
No.
Please.
Sean and I.
I'm going to get my
I need
hair done tomorrow.
hats.
I'm gonna have.
You don't need it. You should see how much I've lost since that, especially for our
You're down?
cemetery in the summer.
Oh, yeah, we can't have hats.
If you guys could look here down in case we need.
I've got it, I've got it. I've got it.
I have extra.
I'm
I have
getting my
extra.
best.
Mine's been going for a long time.
I'm getting my
All right, I gotta go, you guys.
I'll check it.
Okay.
We don't have, I'll let
Bye, guys.
Kathy send a note out.
Yeah, I'll double check.
All right, thank you, guys.
All right.
Good night. Drive safe.
Conditioning is 5 a.m. when I got sold.
Okay, you got one second.
I do.
And I used the word moment, because I didn't know anything about it. Now, mind, Kate's not in her class, this is all here.
Right.
Right, this is, I don't know if she heard it directly from Anya or heard it from other kids, other girls that she knows in Anya's class. She goes, I don't know. I got a problem. Oh, what do you think about that? Oh, nothing. Nothing. The teacher said, don't do that stuff. I don't think the teacher has. So, I said, well, I think they just had that. So I just want to share, that's all I know.
Okay.
But like the way Kate made it sound, it sounded personal, a little bit smarter.
Yeah, there's 3 boys named Steve.
They came out. Okay. I figured you would know. Yes.
Okay.
They obviously have no chance. I hope nothing
But I mean,
worse than this.
that's why I told the
comes from
dads
her.
too. I said, that's why I want a third party.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
said, if we screwed up, we screwed up.
Oh, so be it, right.
I mean, if Michelle screwed up,
Or the teacher, classroom teacher.
right, absolutely.
Properly, or whatever the
should.
case may be. I
I mean-
don't want her, I don't want her. to understand.
Fair. Oh.
So I want to protect her. So anyway, just wanted to.
Cool.
All right. Have a good
Thanks.
night.
I appreciate it. Thanks for everything.
Talk to you soon. Saturday.
Yep. I will, you too.
Thanks.